All right, let's talk a little bit about the bicarbonate buffering system. And so I'm going to try to make this as straightforward as possible. I like this particular illustration because there are other ways that CO2 is moved in the blood, but the bicarbonate buffer system, which is really what we're looking at here, is the majority of the ways that the way that CO2 is transported. And so I think it's really effective to start with one idea and then add the details on top of it. So this is meant to be kind of the introduction. It's by no means an exhaustive explanation of how this process works, but I think it's really helpful to get kind of the big picture idea here of what your body's trying to do. And we're going to stay focused on this particular reaction that you see right here. We're going to look at it both at the tissues, which is what's represented on the left-hand side, and at the lungs, and specifically the alveolus on the right-hand side. And so if it's not obvious to you why CO2 is produced by cell metabolism, you may want to go and cite your textbook or find other videos talking about kind of the cellular mechanisms of the TCA cycle or citric acid cycle as you see here. But basically, when we're using oxygen to make ATP, one of the major byproducts here is CO2. And so active cells, which all of our cells in our body are pretty darn active, they're going to be kicking off a lot of CO2. Especially when you increase your level of activity or your metabolic rate in any way. So these active cells, we're going to start with the tissues and we're going to work our way to the lungs. The reactions are identical here. Just like chemical reactions, they're always going to be able to go both directions. This is the same chemical reaction, but at the tissues it goes one direction. It kind of flows with a high concentration of CO2, whereas at the lungs it's going to go the other direction. It's going to go towards CO2 offloading. So our cells are going to be producing lots of CO2, which is very soluble, which is different than oxygen. CO2 is going to diffuse through the interstitial space and make its way to the blood vessels. CO2, when mixed with water, will actually form a weak acid called carbonic acid. And that'll happen on its own. So if you take a glass of water and you just blow into it for a while, maybe like 4 or 5 minutes, you just exhale all of the air that you exhale, you put in there, it will actually change the pH of the water. The water will become more acidic. Now in our body, we actually have an enzyme, and it's called carbonic anhydrase, and it does what all enzymes do. It speeds up this chemical reaction. And so in the presence of a lot of CO2 in water, carbonic anhydrase will very, very rapidly convert CO2 in water into carbonic acid. Now then carbonic acid does what it always will do, which a certain proportion of this carbonic acid that you produce will dissociate into what's called bicarbonate that you see right here, and a proton, an additional proton into the solution. And that additional proton will lower the pH, and this is the fundamental mechanism for changes in pH due to cell metabolism. A lot of times we just say that pH changes, but this is the actual major mechanism behind that. Lactic acid is a lot of times what people think of when they think of activity leading to a pH change. Now lactic acid is due to fermentation, which is actually not usually being used when you're going to be producing mass amounts of CO2. And so lactic acid can change pH as well, but this is our major mechanism, and this is what links CO2 and changes in proton concentration in your blood. Once you get to this step, what you've actually done, the hydrogen ion will actually go off and bind to hemoglobin, which is what this blue HB is representing. That's what will happen to that proton. But then the bicarbonate is left over, and it's a leftover negative charge. And so if the story ended right here, you would actually start accumulating negative charges inside of the cell, and you would have a really, really unbalanced electrical situation here. So bicarbonate's going to move out of the cell actually, and in order to balance that change in negative charge, you actually bring in chloride, and this is called the chloride shift. And so chloride isn't really participating directly in this reaction. What it's doing is basically just balancing the charge, because bicarbonate concentrations are going to get so high in the cell, it's going to move down its concentration gradient. If you lose too many negative charges, you also have an electrical imbalance. So you're going to have chloride moving back in simply to balance charges. And if you'll notice, a lot of times in cell biology when you're looking at these kind of reactions, that's primarily what chloride does as an anion. It basically just balances charges. Probably before they even knew or tested that chloride actually did this, they probably just assumed that it did because they've seen it so many other places. And so that's really what's going to be going on here. When you're at an active tissue, you're going to be producing CO2. You're going to be changing your pH slightly, and you're going to be kicking off bicarbonate into the plasma. And so this is the explanation when you read or have someone tell you that bicarbonate is our primary place that we have CO2 in our blood. And so this is the primary carrier. This is how CO2 is mostly transported in the blood. So as this red blood cell moves through your blood, gets all the way back to your lungs, then you have the situation over here. And again, the chemical reaction is the other way around. So pause the video right now and just take a look at the chemical reaction. It's the same thing, you've just flipped the arrows around. And so what's important in context, you guys, we just went over the detail, and so what's important in context is just to notice that you are pushing CO2 into this alveolus. This chemical reaction will stop if the concentration of CO2 in the alveolus gets too high. And the way that it can get too high is if you're not breathing. And this whole idea of breathing and why you have to constantly breathe is in order to keep the concentration of CO2 very low in the alveolus. If you do that, then you will pull in the bicarbonate, pull in the excess protons, and you'll run this reaction backwards and produce CO2 in the alveolus, which you will then breathe out, which keeps your body stable. Basically, you have a constant production of CO2, and if you don't do anything about it, you're going to have too much CO2 and therefore too low of a pH in your body. So the output is right here, but this output is totally dependent upon your ability to breathe, which drives down the CO2 level in your lungs. Because CO2 is very low in our atmosphere, if we breathe, we keep this level very, very low. The partial pressure of CO2 remains low, and everything is happy. You have this beautiful cycle of CO2 being produced and CO2 being kicked off. If you change your ventilation rate, or you just don't breathe enough, or sometimes if you breathe too much, you can cause pH imbalances. And it's because if you hyperventilate right now, do it while you're sitting down if you're going to do it, you will actually drive the CO2 too low, pull in too many protons, and actually make yourself slightly basic. And the neurons in your brain will sense this first, and you'll get a little bit of spotty vision. But just try to look at this in grand scheme, stepping back, looking at this whole process of CO2 production, CO2 efflux, or getting rid of that CO2 that you've produced. And you do this through this main chemical reaction here. The whole thing's this bicarbonate buffering equation that you can see illustrated a billion different ways. But I think this is a pretty good introduction to the main idea behind this.